All right. Hello, everyone. All right, we are live. Great, great, great. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Amy Wentz, candidate for City Council here in Richmond, Virginia, in the city's 8th district, which is Southside. I am hosting town halls to cover each of my priorities, which I'm sure you all are familiar with now. They actually spell out 8th. So we've already completed E for Education. We completed the infrastructure town hall and the town hall on growth. And so tonight we're talking about housing. So we're all things housing. One of the reasons why we are doing this series virtually is because of COVID-19. We're not able to meet in large groups inside, indoors. So we are doing these town halls virtually so that we can be accessible and make sure that you all get to hear my message, and then I get to interact with you all about the priorities that you want your council person to focus on. Housing is, if you've checked out my website, I have some clear examples of some of the things that I'd like to do regarding housing policy. The website is www.amyinthe8th.com. So that's AMYIN the number 8 th.com. So amyinthe8th.com. Check out the section that says housing for all things related to my vision for housing in this area. But one of the things that I just wanted to talk about before we bring on our amazing panelists is that, much of our district and the 8th district is zoned for single family dwellings. And I'm not sure if you all know what zoning is or what that even means, but I'll just say that we have over 30 types of zoning in the city of Richmond, and a lot of them are dedicated to residential zoning. But so single family dwellings, it means a single family household, right? So these zonings coupled with let's see, where am I? Whoops, sorry. So these types of single family zonings, plus the issues that we have when it comes to doing special use permits with our permit office, and anytime you want to rezone a specific parcel for a something that is not specifically zoned for, that process can be very difficult for developers. And so we have a lot of those issues. So we need to work on increasing our housing supply over here. We also want to work on rent control and restricting single family zoning in the area so that we can add additional housing options. So we will be talking tonight about, sorry, let's go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is evictions. As we know, we are in a state of eviction crisis here in Richmond, and it is a serious issue that we really need to really be focusing on. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to bring Dr. Kate up in a few minutes. We're also going to be talking about city and state resources for rent support during the pandemic. There are a lot of people that are still out of work and still going through a crisis, and where their jobs are not able to get the income that they were getting before, and so we're dealing with that right now. There are a lot of resources the state, the federal government, and the city has provided, and so we'll go through those. We're also going to talk about home ownership and pathways to home ownership. So we have some amazing panelists that are going to come up and talk about that later, and then also redevelopment without displacement. So I've talked to a lot of residents in the 8th district, and many of them feel like that the 8th district is ripe for growth, but we don't want to grow at the expense of displacing our residents who have been committed here and have been here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So with that, I am going to bring in Dr. Catherine Howell. Hi, Dr. Kate. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
No, it's all good. So as you all see, I'm actually going live from the office this time. So usually we have been at my home, so we're transitioning. So we're trying to get things together in the background, but I think that we're good and we got everything under control. But I want to just introduce you briefly that Dr. Howell investigates ways to interrupt ongoing patterns of migration, displacement, and segregation in cities. Her work focuses on affordable housing and public spaces to explore redevelopment, displacement, and governance. She has specifically looked at the preservation of affordable housing in Washington, D.C., examining the intersections between policies, governance, and the built environment. She was previously a practitioner in local government, developing housing and community development policy in DC and Maryland agencies. And we are glad to have her here with us in the eighth, talking all things the eighth. So I have a few questions that we're going to get into. But first, do you want to I'll just let you say hi to the folks.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I will say that my other hat that I haven't updated on my bio is that I co-direct and co-founded the RVA Eviction Lab. So my colleague, Ben Teresa, and I, we talk about our eviction quite a lot. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation.
Thank you so much. And I'll just shout out Ben as well. I have met with him a couple times and follow him on Twitter and follow all the work that the RVA Eviction Lab is doing. Super, super excited to have you all as a part of this town hall. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about and wanted to ask you about is just kind of telling 8th District residents what is our current, state of evictions in Richmond, and just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think what's important to think about is that right now, we're in the middle of what is sort of ultimately a potential crisis in terms of eviction. With COVID-19, a lot of folks have been out of work. I don't think it's news to anyone in your district. But this has meant that folks are having more trouble paying rent. And this is, people who are already struggling to pay rent. People who are paying more than 30%, more than 50% of their income for rent, utilities every month. And even the most amazing budgeter, and let me tell you from interviews and talking to folks, they are amazing budgeters, are not going to be able to make the rent. And so when you add lost wages and shortened shifts, this really puts a crunch on a lot of families. And we had a statewide moratorium on eviction that expired at the end of June. And there's a bit of a patchwork across the state now. And the federal moratorium that protected anything that was federally supported, whether that's through a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, Fannie Mae loan, or through a federal subsidy like the low-income housing tax credit, or home, or other sorts of funding sources, Section 8. That actually expired on Friday. And so we have a lot of families, across the state, a third of all renters are at risk of being evicted because they've struggled to pay rent already. And so this is sort of like where we are in this moment, which is scary enough, right? This is not where we want to be as a community. It's not where we want to be as a state or as a country. But this was already compounded on top of a persistent high rate of eviction in the city. Our rate, even during the recession, didn't matter ups, downs, our rate has been around 11%. And that puts us at the second highest evicting jurisdiction, large jurisdiction in the country. 5 of the top 10 highest evicting jurisdictions are in Virginia, and that's not the top 10 list we want to be on. So we have a lot of families who really are experiencing significant housing instability, and that's been persistent over time. So I guess I'll stop there and kind of leave it for the next discussion.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm gonna, as you're talking about the next question, I actually brought up some information from the RVA Eviction Lab that I'll probably put on the screen, and I might talk to you about some of these maps that unfortunately put the South Side in a really bad light. And so I want to just make sure that folks can see that and see the state that we're in, why there needs to be vigorous action towards anti-eviction policy. So the next thing, I have been going through all of you all's research, which is amazing research. You guys have done a great job with data. But can you tell us about the connections between evictions and foreclosures, and then also maybe the connection between education stability? And one of the things about with my priorities is I'm trying to tie in the intersections of why all of these things matter and why they're important and how they connect. And so if you could kind of speak on some of that, I'm going to actually bring up some of these maps while you're talking so that, as we can talk about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think it is important to say that our most impacted communities in the city of Richmond are in the south side, they are in the north side, and on the east end. And so you kind of, these are areas that are heavily impacted, whether it's in single family homes, as you discussed, there are a lot of renters in single family homes who are facing significant rates of eviction, or in multifamily buildings. It's really, these homes, whether you're in single family or multifamily, you're facing significant risk for housing instability. There's a lot of actually intersections with eviction, and we talk about eviction and try to sort of push back a little bit on the idea that it's this one moment. You get evicted and wow, bummer, that's too bad. But eviction is, it sort of has these like long-term effects, right? Which is that once you have an eviction on your record, it's harder to get a house. It's harder to get your next apartment because your landlord can just deny you legally based on that one eviction on your record.
Mm-hmm.
And that disproportionately impacts, we know from other research, particularly Black women. And so that also then leads into sort of questions of family and children and the instability that leads to. And so these are sort of some of the immediate challenges. And I think this relationship between, actually you've got a great map up there that I'll talk a little bit about, which is the rates across the city. And so while I said the citywide rate is 11%. Okay, well, so if you look at that kind of arrow of really light pink in the center there, that's the West End. And in those neighborhoods, the rate, it can be below 5% or below 3%. And in other neighborhoods, the dark red, for example, the rate is more than 3 times the citywide average, so more than 33%, meaning 1 in 3 renters are evicted every single year. And there are some buildings where that's even higher. And so we're really talking about sort of an uneven geography across the city. And when we looked at what we sort of got into that, for Ben and I, this is sort of the question is, it's more than just kind of where is it? But what does that mean, right? We want to dig in. And what we found was that even controlling for income, for home values, and a host of other factors in the census data, the thing that impacted eviction, community level eviction rates the most was racial composition of the community. So Black and Latinx neighborhoods were far more likely to have high eviction rates, and in fact, so you would actually increase as the neighborhood became less white, the eviction rate went up, and actually as the neighborhood got more white, there was actually a protective effect on white neighborhoods, and this may be a little bit off into a space that you weren't planning to go, Amy, and so I apologize, but
no, it's okay.
People say, okay, well, what does that mean? Is that a landlord looks at 2 tenants and says, you're in, you're out? We don't think so. What we think is that it's deeper than that. Is that the whole reason why people end up in particular neighborhoods has to do with the racialized nature of our built environment. And that is in housing segregation. That is in the fact that during the Depression and the New Deal, loans were denied to borrowers of color. And so as part of redlining, and entire neighborhoods were redlined. And so that meant that you actually have people who never were able to acquire wealth and ultimately buy homes. And so that meant that you have more renters of color, disproportionate numbers of renters of color. And all of these things have these kinds of compounding effects. You also have neighborhoods that were severely disinvested. And so the upshot is that in combination with things like criminal record, which we know disproportionately impacts communities of color, that's something that can deny you housing. And so that means a landlord, maybe on the West End, is not interested has decided to not rent to anyone who's had a previous eviction, who's had a conviction. Well, that automatically sort of filters you into certain kinds of neighborhoods. And so that's kind of what we mean, that it's deeper than just the eviction moment. It's deeper than just non-payment of rent. It's more than that. So that's kind of an overlay. Sort of
No, makes sense. I just want the folks at home to understand this map, and that like where we are in the 8th district, here in the south side, if you see when she's talking about the lighter pink sections, north of the river, and how, we have a lot of our sections in our specific district that are in, a state of emergency that have 33% higher. And so just wanted folks to see that, these are the extreme eviction rate areas. And as you can see, this is a lot of them are encompassed in our district. And so, when we're talking about evictions, and it is a state of emergency, especially over here in the 8th district.
I'm going to share real quick a link to something that we did. We have fact sheets on our more updated webpage. And there's a fact sheet for the 8th district that I'm going to share in the chat.
Oh, so, yes, please do. Can I bring that up? Oh. Am I able to bring that up?
I hope so.
It's in the private chat. She put it in the private chat. Hey, y'all at home. It's all good. We're all family, and so they understand.
So, just click on.
Just click on it.
Open it up on that. Yeah.
All right, let's see.
I was gonna say, while we're there, we can talk about foreclosure too. But
yeah, let's do it.
All right, what the heck? We're just talking housing. It's great. So with the hello, that's me. With the foreclosure piece of it, the connections there are a little bit different, right? So what we find is that with there are communities where foreclosure was really a problem, which you think like, how could foreclosure and eviction be the same? We're talking about single family home ownership or owner occupied housing and renter housing. Well, what happened is that these foreclosed houses were purchased up by large investors.
Okay.
And those investors actually then started renting them out. And what we find is that these large-scale investors of these single-family homes that were purchased are eviction rates of almost 20%.
Wow.
And so, that's 1 in 5 of these households who are living in a single-family home, which can be a really nice option for them. But often they're facing significant risk of eviction, as well as other issues of housing code violations and things like that, which is something we hear a lot about when we interview folks about eviction.
I'm going to bring this fact sheet up. Let me just make sure I don't stop myself again. So I'm going to hit the share screen button, right? I'm going to hit share screen, and then I'm going to say share screen here, select window, and it'll be the fact sheet. All right, allow. All right, so I'm going to bring this fact sheet up. This is, wow. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, so the data here is from 2016. We have some more updated data. We just haven't updated our fact sheet. This was from the data dump that was done by the Princeton Eviction Lab when they collected data and they have data at the block level. So we were able to really aggregate it, take a look, and really dig into what that looks like at the legislative district level. So it gives a picture and gives a few other demographic elements, and then also looks at the citywide numbers so you can kind of get a sense of where the district fits within that.
So in relation to the city numbers, here's our numbers. Wow, yeah. This is the first time I'm seeing this, you all. So I'm like going in like, but just looking at, even just looking at the graph, it's just it's tough to to swallow. All right, so that brings me to another question, which is, how can City Council, and I've talked to Ben about this before, and we know that Delegate Jeff Bourne and some others have been putting in some amazing housing bills that help with fair housing at the state level. But how could City Council best help with the state of evictions right now? Like, what are things that City Council could do that could help in anti-eviction work?
Well, I think that you have to think about it in terms of short and long-term goals. I think the long-term goals, what you're talking about in terms of redevelopment without displacement, which is affordable housing preservation, that's really beefing up the city's housing trust fund. Because right now we don't really have a lot of money to do the necessary housing that we need, right? And there is a connection between eviction and supply, right? Because if you understand that part of eviction is that the external shocks to your budget, right? You
Mhm.
can, like I said, you can be a perfect budgeter, but like if car breaks down, you get a medical bill, your kid needs something, and any of those things that just can really completely derail your budget, that can really lead to an eviction, especially if you're already paying way too much of your income for rent. And so having a housing supply of ideally, property managers who are held to a higher standard,
Okay.
and who are keeping buildings affordable. It's actually a really important thing. And the other piece of that is that we do find there's a connection between housing conditions and eviction, and so if you don't have anybody who's sort of managing that, which that's one of the things that subsidies can do, is actually manage housing conditions. There's actually asset management. So that's kind of a long-term thing, and I think the way that you're thinking about the long-term actually does have a connection to eviction. In the short term and sort of this immediate, which is really where we are right now, right? I think supporting the state work, great, right? Some of the things that are going on in terms of improving transparency for renters, and access to communities. But the other piece is, things like working on improving access to counsel. We know from New York that a right to counsel law actually reduced the number of filings, and that because suddenly you had somebody who was representing the tenant.
So explain that a little bit about the right to counsel so people can understand that don't understand those terms.
Sure. So that means that if you, much like you have a right to counsel if you go up into any other court, if you come up with an eviction in court, you would have a right to an attorney who can help you with your case.
Okay.
And so that we know, like I said, New York is having some really great results. I think Philly implemented it as well. And increasingly, this is something people are looking at because of the results in New York. And that's really an important thing for this immediate case. We've got some amazing attorneys in the city, Legal Aid Justice Center, Central Virginia Legal Aid, Virginia Poverty Law Center, and especially I will call out VPLC's eviction helpline. They are doing really hard work. They can't get to everybody, and so we need to kind of think about better ways to get representation. Continuing to support the diversion program, the eviction diversion program run by Housing Opportunities Made Equal. I think that's really, really important, and because it can mean it can mean the difference between having an eviction on your record that follows you for years and being able to go and find that next apartment.
So let me ask this, because right now, as the program stands, it's a landlord can opt to be in it or not be in it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
What is something that we can do to make it more appealing to landlords to want to join? Because I've heard that that's one of the biggest issues right now is that some landlords just don't even want to bother with it.
Yeah, and I understand there's some different requirements at the state level, at the state program that's starting. I believe it started in July 1st.
July 1st.
Yeah, so I would check on that one. I'm a little bit hazy on the details.
It's okay. I'll look it up and we'll.
The programs are slightly different, but it's really, to me, it's unclear why landlords wouldn't want to participate, because you're going to get paid. You're getting guaranteed that you're going to get paid. The tenant's not getting anything over on the landlord here, but it's letting them work through a process instead of actually working through the courts. And so, I think that if getting paid is not enough of an incentive, I'm not sure what to do.
Right. So I'll just say, just from my personal experience, so when my daughter was a little wee baby girl, and I lived in Southwood, it's called Southwood Apartments now. Back in the day, it was called San Susie. La Mancha is where I stayed. And I actually had a job that was tied to the childcare. So I worked at a childcare center, and my daughter was able to come with me to work. And my daughter got sick. And so, when you're in a daycare center, if your child is sick, you're not supposed to be, they're not supposed to be there. But of course, I would bring my child to work. So I had to be out of work for a length of time while she was sick. And I ultimately got discharged from that position. And so I, lost my income. There were no programs like this in existence back then. And unfortunately, I was evicted out of my first apartment in La Mancha. And so I remember the day that the sheriff came and knocked on the door, and they took all of my items out to the side of the street. And I remember seeing people walking through and rummaging through my items, and I don't have my yearbook when I went to Huguenot anymore. I didn't have my saxophone that was in the band because all of those things were put onto the street. And I think it's like one of those things where it's like your lowest point, like you feel like you're at your lowest point. And so thankfully, you know, I'm a homeowner now. I was able to, you know, make some, you know, some choices that led me to be able to turn around things. But I am very, very, very much passionate about this and about us getting this right and really turning things around. So there's a couple things that I want to bring up for folks at home, and I will be putting this information in the chat so that we can make sure that you all get it too. But one of them, we were talking about the Virginia Poverty Law Center. They have a tenant, your rights as a tenant during COVID-19 outbreak, and it basically outlines like everything that your landlord would do, the court process. It's what's illegal for the landlord to do, the duties of the landlord. So they're still having to do certain things. And they have some a number here. So if you're facing eviction or if you're having issues, you can call 1-866-LEGL-AID. So it's 1-866 legal aid, but it's not LEGL-AID. So that, and then there's also an eviction legal helpline, 1-833-NO-EVICT. And so I'm going to pass this off to my friend who's going to put the information in the chat. And so that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about was resources, right? Because we're in tough times right now. And we talked about some of them. I just want to make sure that folks know that there is, if you're having issues and you want to use the city's eviction diversion program that actually was on the agenda tonight on City Council. So I was on City Council earlier listening to them go through discussion about that. But you can also call the eviction helpline. That's 1-833-663-8428. You press 4, you leave a message, they call you back, and they can provide payment assistance with Richmonders that are on the brink of eviction. They can also make the landlord whole and ensure tenants are keeping their housing. And so we understand that making sure that folks have stable housing is important. And then I'll also put some other resources in the chat because I did a whole thing of resources. So I will put all of that stuff in the chat. So if people are facing that, you know, they can have those resources. So let's see, back to my staying on task here. Yeah, so I mean, honestly, those were the 3 questions that I had for you. You know, any other things that you'd like to bring up or things that you think that 8th District residents should know about or I should know about as a candidate, please let me know and we can, you know, you can say some last words.
Well, I would say the last piece that I would say is that the state is working on or has put together emergency rental assistance based out of some federal funding that they've received. And so it's really important that we get that in the chat as well from the organization that is managing that is ACTS, ACTS, and they're a social service agency in the city that has been working on this for a while, but now they're working on eviction prevention through rental assistance.
Yes, I see that. I have their number too, so I'll shout that out. ACTS organization is 804-644-2401, and that's ACTS. So ACTS, the Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program.
Yep, and they and to be fair, like they're another one because they're getting so many calls. They may take a message and call you back. So be patient, but keep working at it because this is important and this is what this money is supposed to be there for.
Yes, indeed. Well, Dr. K, I'm so thankful for you. We're going to put all of the RVA Eviction Labs information up on our Facebook page, all our social media, so folks can go to it, check out the data sheets that you all did on the 8th District and the city as a whole. We appreciate the space that you hold in this city. We appreciate the work that you are doing. And any way that I can assist in that work, please let me know.
Great. Well, thank you for reaching out. It's so important. And I just appreciate getting to talk to folks about this. So, and I'll make sure that you have our updated information. So
yes, please. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, you all. So, all right. And I apologize for being a little disheveled. But there's just so many things I wanted to talk about. So I literally have resources like all over this table because I wanted to talk about so much stuff. So got a little bit of a flustered start, but super thankful to Dr. Kate. The work that the RVA Eviction Lab is doing here is just amazing. It's phenomenal. The data that they have to support all the evidence that they provide is just amazing. So yeah, we were talking about evictions, rent support. There's some other supports that I want to talk about before we bring our next guests up. And one of them is the Homeless Crisis Network. So if you know someone that is in need of indoor shelter and they're experiencing homeless crisis, they can call the crisis line, and that's at 804-972-0813. And again, we'll put that in the chat so that people will know. Homeward VA is handling that, and they have some information that I'll be able to put out there for you. The other thing is the YWCA also has support for domestic violence survivors. So if you are in need of that type of support, you can contact the YWCA. Their number is 804-612-6126. And again, that is for domestic violence survivors. If you are, let's see what else. Oh, if you need legal help, okay, the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society also is able to provide support for that. So if you need information about that, just inbox me. I'll send you all of this. And then also, if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and then you need housing guidance, there is a community organization called Side by Side that is also offering that as well. So if you need any support like that, rent and mortgage relief help, like I said, any of those supports, just hit me up and I will make sure that you get pointed to the resources that you need. So I'm going to hand that off so that they can put that in there. We have the tenant rights that we spoke about, so that is done. And all right, so what we're going to do now is bring up my next guests. Okay. And hello, you all are live. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell a story, you all, about like why it was important that I had them on this housing town hall. You know, you all remember back when I was getting some data together for the Blackwell community to try to rally folks around, pushing back the historic district. And I remember, talking to you all at length about just the state of our community over here on the South Side. And you all have made a real commitment to helping us with not just that. There's a lot of people who don't pay their, that are unable to pay their taxes, or they're thinking that they're in the elderly and tax relief program, but they have to reapply every year and they don't realize that. And so then they fall behind. And then once you're behind in the arrearage, you're not allowed to get back in it again. And so this couple, you all, okay, has just tirelessly worked to try to ensure that Southside residents are able to stay in their homes, that they know their rights, that they know the process by which they need to remedy their situation. So I just want to thank you to the Harris family for joining me tonight. And I'll let you all just talk a little bit about, I'll let you each just talk a little bit about what specific, because I know you all have different roles. So Tara, you can talk first about what you do, and then Damon, you can talk about what you do.
All right. Okay. So I'm Tara Harris. I'm a realtor with the Teal House Company, and Damon and I are a team. I am the buy and sell side of our team. And Damon likes to introduce himself and go on a long spiel. So I'll give him
this is not the platform from all of that. That's not why we're here. There's always got to be something extra.
Family matters. Family matters.
It is always something.
I love it.
Always something. But I guess my role is the investing side, right? My role is ensuring that our clients are buying properly, ensure that the investors that we work with, as well as the properties that we work on, do not displace current residents, while we're still making the money that we need to make to continue on in our business and our journey in real estate.
Okay.
I guess, so that's pretty much it. My passion for this has grown from Satara's passion for this. I never really considered myself a real estate person, still don't. But I do believe that housing is a human right. So therefore, that's how we work.
That's right. Housing is a right. That is true. That is something that which I believe in as well. And so that's why we're here now talking about this because we have it's like the 8th district is really interesting, right? Because we are a prime district for
Mhm.
growth. And I think that the residents are excited about seeing like resources coming and they want to see some growth, but they're also concerned about having to be pushed out, taxes going up, things like that would cause them not to be able to afford to stay here. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the word that I know you, Damon, hates, and that is gentrification. Your outlook on the word and the term is very interesting. So I really, really want you to share that with the people because I think that that's something that folks need to hear. I think it's turned into like a buzzword, and you have a really good take on it. So by all means, please.
Well, on the spot, I should have, you know, gentrification, I feel, is turned into a buzzword, but it's not a real word, right? Gentrification is actually the result of decades of toxic inequality that face our communities. Decades. And gentrification is just the end of it, right? So if, especially in the 8th district, when it was initially created and the houses were built up, you can tell by the structure of the homes. You got the 3-bedroom, 1 bath, the 2-bedroom, 1 bath. You have the shotgun ranches, those really skinny, small houses. That was traditionally made for low income, right? And that was made for the entry level, but it was made for poor people using government money, right? And when you look at the corridor, like Hull Street corridor, and you're like, you have these businesses and stuff like that that's in that little stretch. That was created with that money that was meant to develop more housing. But when they develop more housing, they develop projects. They didn't develop housing. You know what I mean? And so when we talk about gentrification, we're talking about the results of years of them stripping away our resources and leaving us in blight. And especially in Richmond, when we got taxes, the whole tax scandal, with the city of Richmond kind of picking and choosing what communities need to be developed and when. You have all that together, and there it leaves.
Hold on,
let's gaping space for gentrification.
Let's explain that a little bit.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, let's explain that because I know that they're probably not understanding what we're talking about. But what we're talking about, we're talking about the tax delinquency issue that we have here. That's what we're talking about, right? When you're talking about,
and all that's connected, right? And all that stuff is connected to the shift in the community. All that stuff is connected to the shift in the community. So when we talk about gentrification, it's the end game. It's not the beginning. It's the end. It's the end game of all of that inequality.
So in certain areas of town, you can have houses that are tax delinquent for a certain period of time, and they won't go through the tax delinquency auction process. But in certain key areas, it's like they focus on a specific area and they start identifying those properties to kind of turn a neighborhood around. And
all day.
And that process should not be like that. A process should be equitable. Whatever process they have for regaining taxes from tax delinquent properties should be equal across the board and in all areas of town. And I think that what we're seeing is that some of that is kind of is helping with gentrification and aiding gentrification. And that's like city sponsored stuff there, and that's not cool. And so one of the things that I'll say
that's some hard.
That's some.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I could go ahead. Say
no, and you're right. And the city, places like Carytown and other districts, you can see even Monument Ave. Those great Monument Ave residents, they could be delinquent on their taxes $100,000. But just as Catherine from the RVA Eviction Lab mentioned how eviction reduce when people have representation, so are those houses being put up on a tax auction. They may not have money to pay their taxes, but they have money to pay their attorney. So that's a whole different conversation. But yeah.
Well, and I think as we uncovered that process too, we found that that they were just being unfair in the fees that they were charging. So you might owe a certain amount that is actually fees to pay back, that you might be able to get the community to rally around you. We could get community support, but then they're adding fees amongst fees for like titling and lawyers and all of those things that make the amount so much more unaffordable.
They almost double bill you. And those relationships of the people that double bill you are directly connected to Richmond and the tax assessor's office and from City Hall. City Hall contracts with people that are purposely doing that for their profit gain. Then they take it to the eviction to what the foreclosure court when they transfer it, and it's done by one attorney. And that one attorney has multiple properties that are behind in taxes, but you never see his houses on the tax thing. And that's how it goes. They use one company to process it. They use another company to go after you, and then they use another company to sell it. And they're all the same people. And one of the things, if you want to create equitable housing, that needs to stop immediately.
All right.
That
Yep, you heard it here first. So one of the things that I noticed, like as we drive around, is that we'll see a block of homes, and like you'll be able to pull up in the property book and see the ones that are owned by folks that don't live in town. And I think that that's one of the things that, one of the key issues that we have, and I'm going to bring you in, Tara, in a second, because we're going to talk about how we transition from, because what bothers me is when I see a renter paying $1,300 for a home that if they owned it, they would only be paying $700 a month, like if they had a mortgage on it. So they're paying double because they're renting. And, I really want to focus on how we can encourage some of our out-of-town investors that really aren't invested in our area and really aren't invested in in Richmond as a whole, to be able to provide those homes for families, that want to have a pathway to home ownership. And so, Damon, if you want to talk a little bit of just about how we saw that, and then I'm going to bring Tara in to talk about how we can help folks to usher them into that.
Right. Well, you're right, especially in the 8th and North Side as well. But in the 8th, you'll go through whole blocks and be like, man, this block is tore up. These houses are looking raggedy. And then you pull their records, realize, and when we're talking about out of town, that could be Chesterfield, that can be Henrico, but they're right around the way, but they don't live there. Even some of our local leaders own some of these properties. Even have some of these local leaders that represent the 8th district. City council people currently for the 8th district that own some of these properties. And it's not just they keep them blight on purpose. I don't know why they do that. It's your property. I don't know why you want it raggedy, but it only comes to the fact that you really don't truly care about the well-being of the residents that's living in there. Yeah. And I'm not, I don't, and then, and at the same time, the same people that represent our communities are evicting them. And not only are they evicting them, they're garnishing their wages at the same time. So you're putting me out, but you're one of those aggressive landlords that are garnishing my wages, right? So,
and then you're not upkeeping. Then you're not using the money to upkeep the homes. You know what I mean? So you're leaving them blighted in the community.
And one of the things that I always feel that needs to be done is you have to, because Tara can talk about this better. Like we get a lot of clients that want to buy a home that are from the 8th, but they don't want to look in the 8th. And the reason why they don't want to look into the 8th is because you have whole neighborhoods, whole blocks owned by outside people who aren't taking care of it. So they look at their own community as a place where they don't want to be. And that's not fair, but that also goes back to the entire history of toxic inequality. We've been taught to kind of move on, and that's a whole other story. But the bottom line is that we aren't doing anything to embrace current new homeowners and current new investors, because these properties are already owned by this whole streets. This whole street where we may research and see that there's out of 10 houses, only 2 of them are owned by owner occupied. 8 of them are owned by investors. And we can go way down the road to Petersburg, and 80% of that area is owned by outside investors. And then we wonder why it can't turn around.
Yeah.
It can't turn around because it's outside money.
And it's no shade to investors, right? But it's like what we want over here in the 8th are investors that really want to invest in the 8th district. They don't want to just have an investment property. They're not keeping it up. We want someone that's going to help us to allow the 8th district to be a viable option when folks are shopping for homes and really wanting to, create a home for their families in the city. And so with
Mhm.
that, part of my platform is just to really create opportunities for folks to understand how homeownership is attainable. And Tara, I know that you are a specialist in this area, so if you could just kind of help us talk through, some of those
Yeah,
opportunities that are available now.
absolutely. I mean, one of the things you just said, making sure that helping people to see that the eighth district can be a viable option. But one of those things is making sure that there is entry level housing available for people to buy. Because when we have so many investors, they come in, they do, flip the houses, put them back on the market, and then they price people out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an issue. Another thing is just like what you were saying with the rents, people are more comfortable, and this is what we're seeing, people are more comfortable paying double the rent than understanding and going into a mortgage. They'll spend
Mhm.
$1,300 on rent, $1,200 on rent, and then you try and have the conversation with them
Mm-hmm.
about home ownership, and I just feel like there's a lack of understanding there. So I definitely think that there needs to be more education.
Yeah, I was about to say,
And
fear. Is it fear? Is it just
it
them
is. I
thinking
mean,
they can achieve it?
you don't know it. It's definitely fear, but it's just not truly understanding the process.
Mm-hmm.
And Damon and I have both experienced that when people, go through some type of home buyer education, they're
Mm-hmm.
more confident moving forward. Even if they don't truly understand everything that's going on, I don't know, things just come a lot easier for them.
Mhm.
So education is definitely something that would help with that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've noticed as I've been going, we did a big canvas this week I held a fish fry just to engage voters on Sunday. And one of the things that we did was we went and put door knockers on the doors of all of the residents in the 802nd precinct. And one thing I noticed was there was a bunch of little post-it notes that were on the doors of houses that were from a company that says, hey, I want to buy your house. And they make it look like that they're scribbling the note in and they're putting it on there. And a
Oh,
lot
we
of
got
people.
them. We got them.
So
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to wrap my head around like, how do we get folks to stop harassing our homeowners and our folks here to stop asking them to buy their homes. And then they make these deals seem so tangible and lucrative that it makes people feel like, oh, maybe I should do that and go move in with whatever to get this money. But really, we need them to stay put.
We talked about that's crazy, Tar. We just talked about this today, and one of the things we feel like is there needs to be because that's a whole industry in itself. You have
Yeah.
people that call themselves investors that don't have any money that they
Mm-hmm.
Right.
wholesale in these properties, right? And the wholesaling industry needs to be a lot more regulated. They're trying to, but they need to be a lot more. It needs to be a lot more regulated because even when these families do sell their home, their equity is being stolen. Their equity is being taken for their profit because these people can't buy your house in cash for nothing unless they embed their profit points in that sale. Their
Mm-hmm.
profit point is their equity. That's their
Mm-hmm.
profit point. So they're selling your house at a bottom rate and they're keeping the equity for their profit. Now you may have moved. You may have moved for $20,000 or $30,000 less than what you could have had, or even $5,000 less, because they kept that
Right.
as their fee.
Mm.
That needs
So
to be
what?
Yeah.
regulated. That can't happen.
So wholesaling, you saying the wholesaling, just that particular career field needs to be regulated a little bit better.
Yeah, they're trying to, but there's workarounds, and it's real estate. Real estate,
Mm-hmm.
you got a bunch of
Right.
workarounds. And it all still goes back down to just the way because it all. You talk about eviction. You talk all that stuff is directly connected. All that stuff is directly connected,
Mm-hmm.
and without that, we don't have a resident really have a chance to kind of. There's no place for them to go because
Mm-hmm.
Right.
even like with that elderly and they're behind in their taxes, there's no place to go. And then even that tax program, it doesn't help them if they're
Mm-hmm.
already behind a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
None of those things help.
one of the things that
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I looked at the code for the elderly and tax relief program. So just for everybody listening, watching at home, there is state code, state law, and then there's city code that covers and governs these programs. So the city can't just come up and say, I'm going to do a program that gives folks assistance on whatever. It has to go to the state first. The state votes on it and allows all localities or all cities to be able to do it. And then cities have to enact an ordinance that covers the program for their particular city. Mm-hmm. For that particular program, the elderly and tax relief program, there is not, it doesn't specifically say in the law that you can't be in arrears to be in the program. So I think that that's just like a, maybe just a city policy that they sometimes use, or maybe people, aren't familiar with the actual law, but really no one should be turned away.
That sounds like a Greg thing.
There should be.
Greg.
I don't know.
Go ahead. That's the guy that controls all that stuff from inside the office. It's
like a
one-man shop. Right. Like a one-man shop. But that's a whole nother story.
Okay,
let me stop talking before you get no business.
No, it's okay. No, I need to know these things. So I'm glad that you said it. But I would just say that, a lot of times it's just us as leaders, we have to look at the law, making sure that the city, the city policy is matching up with the law. And we don't want folks to feel like they have to. One of the things I'm going to try to do is get it to the point where they don't have to reapply all the time. Okay, if you're a certain age, you qualify. Like you're not going backwards. You know what I mean? So maybe if there's something like every 5 years that they have to do it, so that way they just not putting in the paperwork doesn't disqualify them the next year from doing it. Or maybe it's just an easy, I don't know, like a check to say, hey, are you still going to be in this program? Something that doesn't require having to take a form and such up there. Let me see. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you all about is just housing inventory, and in general, as a city, and how, through the Richmond 300 process, we were talking earlier about zoning and how they're trying to come up with some additional zoning options to allow for like multifamily dwellings. And I see that really the need in Richmond is that we don't have much housing for families that are earning like 50% less than the area median income. And so we have a lot of housing that's sprouting up that is between 60 and 80%, but for real, it's that, 50 and under that we're really struggling with. And so, do you have any thoughts about that, or seen anything where you thought that maybe other cities are getting some things right? I know you all do a lot of, real estate efforts in other areas, but I just feel like we're really missing the mark on that here in Richmond.
You want to get this star, or you want me to do it? Which one do?
No, you can do it. Yeah.
Well, he's about to.
I know.
When he pauses like that, you already know we're about to get a whole earful.
All right. First of all, the housing stock here is tough in the entire Central Virginia region right now. There was one point in time where there were 3,000 single-family houses, detached homes on the market from Petersburg all the way to Fredericksburg. That's 3,000. So with that of course dictates the prices of these homes. Mm-hmm. And just like how I believe gentrification is a buzzword, so is affordable housing, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's affordable to who? Like you just said, it's affordable. What's affordable to Amy is not affordable to me. What's affordable to Tara is not affordable to Amy. Mm-hmm. And that whole AMI chart, that adjusted median income chart, fluctuates so quickly, even if they kind of cap that in. And that's what Tara was talking about, entry-level housing. In the 8th district, you saw when Catherine put that graph up, when she talked about like the median home was $99,000, something like that. But the average median income is $38,000.
Let me see.
And which I know a lot of people from that district aren't making $38,000. So there's a lot of people that are making high, and there's a ton of people that are making well below that 38 grand. And the problem is that I guess the problem is that there's no the income, because that number 99 is not a number anymore. That number is now 140, 150. But yet that 38 is still the same, right? So it still goes back to toxic inequality and people aren't able to earn. So when you look at other states are dealing with just and different, because you have different style properties. And the eighth, you have those single family dwellings, and like you said, it's hard. And they putting up the multifamilies and the townhouses and those apartments on the outskirts of the eighth, right? So right in a line of Chesterfield and right in a line of Richmond, like Bainbridge, all those areas are coming up with these new apartments, but those apartments are $300,000, right? They aren't making any entry level because their only thought of entry level is projects, right? And that only thought of entry level are homes. These investors are coming in and removing entry level opportunities because they're jumping right over and they're rehabbing it to fit a $200,000 buyer. They're not rehabbing it for the 140 buyer, even though the city's giving it to them off the books for $25,000. You know what I mean? Like, so they go in, and so now in the market you'll see 3 beds, you'll see 2 beds, 1 bath for $200,000 in the 8th district. And you have these high qualified buyers that love the community, but they can't find anything for under $250,000.
So are you thinking the city just needs to do a better job of when they're giving these properties to have stipulations on how, you know, on how much that they can offer them for, or, you know what I mean, flip them for?
Well, that part's tough because if I'm flipping, you can't tell me what I'm going to do with my money, and you're going to kind of go up against that heavily. And the Richmond Realtors Association is not going to be down for advocating for any of that, you know. But one of the things that Tara and I talk about. Go ahead, Tara.
Well, I was just going to say, I understand that, right? But at some point, we have to. We see that we're in a housing crisis, and although I agree with the Maggie Walker Land Trust, and I am committed to, you know, putting money into that land trust, that is not really going to be the widespread answer to a lot of the issues that we have. So at some point, it's like we have to kind of all get on the same page and say that there's, you know,
it's going to be an assortment of issues because the Maggie Walker Land Trust is perfect, just like you have income-based housing, right? And just like you have, you can use home for home buyer grants to get into entry-level homes. But Tara can talk about it better when it comes to, because all that stuff has to match up to the person, right? So those things sound great, but the people need to, number one, go ahead, Tara, you're better at kind of conveying this message.
Yeah, let's talk about the education and what they needed. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're right. The people do need to match up to what we're seeing is that we get people who don't either qualify or don't qualify for some of the things that they have available. You know, it's kind of like they're missing the mark. And what Damon was explaining when it comes to, I guess when people think of income-based housing, you know, or affordable housing, you know, what exactly is affordable? You know, you see the houses on the market, they're, you know, $250,000. We've seen some that were closer to $300,000.
So
and
you're
then
saying
people who are well qualified that are, you know, well qualified just means you're well qualified. It doesn't mean that you're able to afford a $250,000 house.
So they'll qualify for a program, but the program doesn't fit into the housing stock that we have available. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Like the housing stock is too high for the so the programs are out there. They're qualifying for the programs, but there are just no houses that fit
that match up to. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So there's definitely a gap.
They still have to be qualified for a mortgage.
Right.
Sorry, babe. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Yeah.
And so the mortgage, because of the home is so expensive, and the mortgage, it's just out of their range.
Right. And Tara, break down who the typical buyer is in Richmond, because I think you need to talk about that too. Because
typical buyer in Richmond. No, the typical buyer in Richmond is a Black woman. Professional, working professional. You know, these people are making decent money, and it kind of goes along the line with what Dr. Kate was saying, how when she said that the highest rate in evictions is Black women. They're the one, and that kind of resonated with me because they are the Black women out here. We're out here, we're buying houses, and they're coming up against those issues there. You know, and even when it comes to buying in the neighborhoods that they've grown up in, you know, they would do that, but there's nothing there for them. They, you know, they can't find the houses that match the income in the program, number one. And number two, if they do find some, then it's the question of the different resources that the neighborhood offers, with schools, whether it's, you know, Can they go shopping? There's a lot of things that go down that list. And then they opt to buy outside of the city. Every single time they will opt to buy outside of the city. So,
right. So regardless of the house, there need to be resources to match the house. So you can sell a house for $100,000, but people don't buy just a house; they buy the community, and that's what we've been falling into. Especially in the 8th. I grew up right outside in Meadowbrook. Used to cut through the 8th all the time to get the Whataburger. That's by the place where they still have the Rocket. That Rocket's been there since I was a kid. Ain't nothing different over there except your office. You know what I mean? So it's like it's the same. But there's and you have that was the Kmart, and other than that, there was no place to go, and it's still the exact same. No new development that will help people come back. You don't have to develop everything, but whoever's been running that area, they need to bring some resources that allow some other people to kind of join in and want to be a part of that. You can't ask people to go somewhere where there's no resources.
Right.
So one of the other things that I'm say it again, Dan.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're good.
Well, no, I was just saying one of the things that I've noticed too is just we would talk about the housing stock, and I don't refer to it as raggedy like you said. That was the term that you used. But some of our homeowners are struggling with trying to figure out how they balance taxes, other things, income shortage, and then major repairs. And so a lot of times, I'm really invested into trying to find ways, Project Homes is doing an amazing job, but they have just such a great need for providing roofs and winterization and things like that. But there's a lot of folks that just need to change their galvanized pipes into, PVC, or to do electrical rehauls. And I think that, those are some of the areas that I see that a lot of our folks are struggling in, and that's probably why they are more apt to sell their homes, because they just don't want to make that investment, or they can't afford to make that investment. So those are some of the things that I'm working on, trying to see what other cities have done to tackle that, and see what we can do on council to help with that.
And that's needed. And first of all, let me say, when I say raggedy, I mean raggedy. I don't mean like regular, just need some work. And also mean raggedy, because my goal is I try to help people see the vision of a raggedy house. I say that because they can't, because they want something that's pristine and perfect. But you're right, like the city needs to have something to support these people outside of these private organizations. Because Project Home, you have to fit their criteria. That doesn't help the working mom who's a nurse, who has kids and does all this. She may not qualify for those particular services, and now number one, that may make her a little weary about buying in that area. But when something happens, they end up selling, or the house becomes, you have a water issue, and then you have an electrical issue, then you have this issue, then you fall behind because we are living in a place where they're not getting paid the wages they need to get paid to survive in the first place.
So one of the things I really want you and Tara to just say, because I don't want people to hear some of the language and think that, like, I just want people to understand that these are two folks that really care. They are here in the 8th district all the time, trying to make sure they have specific home buying classes that are specific to the 8th district, where they'll bring up the homes that are over here and just talk about the program. So I just don't want people to leave, to see this and think that the reason why he's using this language is because he's here all the time and he knows what's going on, and he's very passionate about helping the folks in this district. So maybe in with saying some of that.
And I use that language because we are being pushed behind the 8 ball all the time. Like, we have to fight for schools, we have to fight for food, we have to fight for grocery stores, we have to fight for banks, all these things. Like, there's all these things we have, and then you have outside investors coming in, buying all the housing stock, and we celebrate them. Like they'll be in Richmond Business and talk about, they bought all these houses. Where do you get the houses from? How come this family of 3 who makes $35,000 couldn't buy that house that was $80,000? How come the investor got it first? How come the city giving it to the investors instead of the family that's sitting right there?
So it's just a priority. It's our priority. We're giving them to, because we feel like they can do a quick turnaround and get that revenue coming back in, but at the same time, we're not identifying our housing shortage and our ability to provide affordable housing to families that really need it.
Yeah, and resources to the current families that are there. So many times we've encountered families where they are the children of the people who originally owned the house. They don't want to sell the house, but because they're up against the wall, or they're facing foreclosure, or behind in tax, just whatever the issue is, they feel like they have no other choice. And because no one is talking about them, talking to them about the different choices that they have, that there may be another option, and they're being presented with all these different things from investors all the time, calling and hounding them about the house, and shining this so-called money in their face. They make these rash decisions, and a lot of times it ends up hurting the families. We just want people to know that we want to have some different conversations and let people know that there are resources, and that there's people they can call. We can have the conversation, and if you and your family decide that that's the decision you guys want to make, at least you have someone there to help you kind of sift through all the mess.
That's right. One thing before, because there's some questions that people have in the chat, so I want to get to those questions. But one thing I do want to say about that, just that quickly.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You know how sometimes you have a thought. Oh no, I was just talking about pathway to remedy your tax situation. Like, I feel like the end game is just not it's not widely known how you can get out of the situation, and that we need to make that clear for people who are in tax delinquent processes. It doesn't need to be convoluted or confusing. It needs to be like a 5-step process. This is how, if you are in a situation where you're tax delinquent and you want to get out of it, then this is what you need to do. And it needs to be clear and understandable and in clear terms so that everybody can get it. Because I feel like in just helping other people navigate through that process, it seems like the process changes every time. It's not clear. They're pointing to this, call this number. And then when you call that number, they're like, oh, well, actually, you need to call tax. And then when you call tax, they're saying you need to call the city. And it's like one of those things where it's a round robin, and then people get frustrated, and then they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And I think that as a city, we could do a better job of making sure that the pathway to remedy is clear and concise. And that's something that I would focus on. There's some questions that folks have. I'm going to bring them up. All right, so I see one: how to keep senior citizens in good, fair health in their homes. Let me see. I'm not really understanding where she's going with that question. How I'm assuming she means like.
You mean condition?
Yeah. Are you saying? Yeah. So how? Yeah. How do we help senior citizens stay in their homes? I'm thinking that's the gist of the question.
Yeah, Amy, you touched on one part, because Project Home used to be called Elder Homes.
Elder Homes.
Right. So a lot of their services were meant for older homeowners and older residents, where they would do everything, and they still do everything from winterizing to helping you with ramp, all these different things. And you have all these, and then you have home itself, housing. What's it?
Housing opportunities made
equal.
Right. No, you have them as well, but they have situations that will kind of help you prevent your foreclosure and stuff like that too. But when it comes to the condition of the home, honestly, the only place that I really know where you can kind of go to get those little knick-knack things fixed up is Elder Homes or Project Homes. I don't know if anyone else really.
No, we'll do some research on it. Oh, hold on. Here's some other questions too. How do you see or feel about the Richmond 300 project and what they project for the next 20 years? I think it's 30 years. I'm assuming this question is for me about how I feel about the Richmond 300 process. So I was actually on the Economic Development Working Group in that process, and I will say I really recommend folks to provide their feedback on the different planning options. I can say from my perspective, I really feel like the Richmond 300 core team and our representative, Shannon Gonzalez, is our 8th district representative that kind of helped with engagement, really did a good job of making sure the 8th district was engaged. I went to at least 7 events where we talked about just what we wanted to see in the 8th district. If you're familiar with, I think, the infrastructure and the growth town hall, we talked about the nodes that they had identified, and they had specific plans for, well, we created specific plans for Southside Plaza, Bells Road, and some of those other key areas. But with everything, a plan is just a plan, right? We have plans for everything. There's the Blackwell revitalization plan that's still sitting on the shelf, and there's other plans that are still not being implemented. It's about taking action on things. So this is why we're doing this, though, so that we can kind of understand what folks and the people are saying about it and what they want to see. And so that's how I feel about that. Do y'all want to talk about the Richmond 300 plan? I know y'all been on a couple of the sessions that they had. Community.
I'm with you, Amy. It's a plan. Let's add it to the list, but it's a plan.
Right. Add it to the list of plans. I mean, I think, I think that we just need to get people who are really invested in becoming partners with communities and not just coming in to make a quick buck. I think that there's a way that they can create development that's profitable for them, that also that the community is profiting from. I think that that's what I want to do as a representative, really partner with developers and folks that really kind of see the vision that the people have, because it's not like the people don't have ideas and plans of what they want for their community. It's just the fact that we need people that are dedicated to really being inclusive with the voices in the community and making sure that their development is matching the needs that the people are saying. And so we saw that on the Whole Street corridor, some of that wasn't done, and so they brought in businesses that weren't really people didn't patronize them as often as some of the others, because that it wasn't really a need to have certain things. I won't go into specifics, but that's why it's important to check on voices. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about, just we're talking about ideas and things that I want to do, as a council person, and what things that other cities have done that have really made some improvements in areas. One of the things was rental registration. And with property managers and landlords coming from outside of Richmond and in the Commonwealth, the commitment to the betterment of community can often be lost. And so requiring landlords to register their units allows the city to kind of keep track of landlords. And there's some groups like Leaders of the New South and some of these housing advocacy groups that are kind of unofficially creating this data. But if we as a city kind of made it mandatory so that we could track landlords, their properties, and collect information regarding landlords who evict at high rates, this data is necessary to allocate resources like eviction. So to have the data to be able to support the eviction relief program. So that's one of the things that I would be working to try to do here in the city of Richmond. Again, we're not against landlords. We're not against investors. We're not against developers. We're not against any of those things. It's just about really marrying people who are committed to helping the 8th District grow without causing displacement, without causing harm, really listening to voices. Let's see, some other things that other states and cities have been able to do with rent stabilization have been like rent control and rent stabilization measures. We don't have those here. We know in New York they have that rent control so that they're not able to lift the rent super high. Of course, people when I explore things like that, they're like, oh, it'll never happen in Virginia. There's a lot of things that we thought never would happen in Virginia, like those monuments coming down. Like we never thought that would happen, and it did. So I don't want to be a type of person that just thinks that nothing can ever happen. Like I really want to be a person that that says like, yeah, why not? Let's try it. I mean, obviously what we're doing right now, and as a whole, there are certain programs and certain things that are happening that are working well. But as a whole, it's not working because we're facing an eviction crisis. We're facing an affordable housing crisis. So if we want to look at new ways to conquer that, I think that that we should do that. I'm going to, it's 8:15, usually in these things at 8 o'clock. Yeah. I'm going to, is there anything else you all want to tell the people before we close out? Because I know that, just tell them how to contact you.
Good talk.
You could either
Sorry?
contact us. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. You can contact us at our website at tealhousecompany.com. And you can also get us by email too at tara@taraharris.com or damonlharris@gmail.com.
All right. Well, listen,
We're always available. We got free classes at least 3 times a month. So whatever you're looking to if you're looking for any information, we're always here.
talk about your next class right quick. Tell us about your next class.
Oh, our next class is August 13th, and it's called Excluded. That's when we're talking about the true reasons behind Blacks being kept from homes and home ownership, as well as what is actually gentrification. That's a different kind of class. We have home ownership mindset. It's going to be on the 18th, and we have you got to check. You got to just go to the website. It's all there. I don't know the full calendar.
Yeah, if you check us,
yeah,
if you go to thegoodneighboract.com, you'll see a list of all of the classes that we have available.
So you hear that? Thegoodneighboract.com. Thegoodneighboract.com. We're gonna pop that into the thing. And listen, I really appreciate you all. I'm really dedicated to this area and just really improving the quality of life for our residents over here. I really love the things that you have been doing. I appreciate your commitment to our area and just really trying to help folks get into their starter homes and get into homes in general. I look forward to working with you all on council to really make this place even better.
Thank you for having us.
We're so proud of your efforts. It's all
we are very proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, and just to let everybody know, the speakers who are speaking, just because they're subject matter experts and are appearing in my town halls does not mean that they endorse me or my candidacy. We just, want to put that out there just to make sure everyone knows that.
Yeah, how come when we get all these disclaimers? You hear that stuff? All right.
Well, I mean, if you want to make an endorsement, I mean, you know what I'm saying? You can do that.
All I know before you shut it down, Amy has been fighting for the 8th since I met her. And when I first got to know who she was all in. I remember sitting at Brewers Cafe and that slow internet. And he was bringing up records and records and records. And I was like amazed by your resourcefulness and how you saw the betterment of the people, even by putting your own self at risk. I remember you was doing door knocking on Jordan's birthday, Tara, and it was 98 degrees, and she's talking about, I'm gonna go door knocking, you coming? Not at 98 degrees, I'm not. I was there, and she went. And that is something that's needed. You need someone that's willing to go by them to go it alone, and bring people with her. And for that, I endorse you everywhere I go. Every class, people know Amy. Because our community needs people that are down to get dirty, because we are struggling. We are struggling. We didn't need to know we're struggling. I can look at my bank account. I can look at my kids' school. I can look at the fact I got to drive to the West End and go to the grocery store. I already know that. But we need someone that's in there that's talking the talk and not just meeting at the satellite and chilling. That's my point. That's what I got to say. So keep doing what you're doing. You're inspiring everyone. People, no matter what, people are inspired. So you're good.
Thank you. I humbly thank you for those words. And like I said, I look forward to working with you all soon. We're gonna wrap it up because we are over time, but I really appreciate it. I'm gonna pull you all off and I'm gonna say a few last minute words. But thank you all again. All right, you all. So this one went overtime because we had so many things to talk about. Again, if you want to talk to me one-on-one about anything that we've talked about today, because there was so much information, I'll just do kind of like an overview so that we can go back over it. But we talked about evictions earlier with Dr. Kate. She is from the RVA Eviction Lab. I will have all of the information that we talked about, all of the graphs and all of the data on our social media pages. And I think, we're going to put a little thing on, what we'll do is we'll put a little thing on the website that kind of has like a resource tab where people can go and get the information too. So we'll have that out there for you. We also talked about resources right now with the all of the eviction resources. And if you are, having trouble, the state has funds, the city has funds. If you need help, please inbox me. I will pass that information on to you. Also, we talked about tenants' rights. So that if you, the VPLC, Virginia Poverty Law Center, has a toolkit about your rights as a tenant, if especially during this pandemic, if you need help with that. We also talked about pathways to home ownership and how we don't want folks to have to pay rent of $1,300 if in that same house they would be paying a mortgage of $700. I mean, we really want to get folks to the point where they can, be in a position to have a better credit score and be able to earn, to get a mortgage so that they can be a homeowner. And there's nothing wrong with being a tenant, right? No issues with being a tenant, being a renter. I was a renter for a long time. I think that the issue what's happening is rent is becoming like a hustle, and rent is costing people too much. And so when I say pathway to home ownership, it's not because I feel like, you're better off if you have if you own a home. It's more so because I really want to see people being able to keep some money in their pockets and their savings, have things for rainy days, be able to take vacations with their families, and not have to have a large amount of their income going towards their housing costs. I talked to a person on the phone the other night, and she was just like, honestly, I just go to work and come home. And she's like, I don't remember the last time I even had a vacation. And I was just like, why? She's like, well, because I want to keep this home, and this is how much it costs. And it's just the costs are enormous. So I just want to make sure that we're making that transition easy if folks want to do that. And if not, like I said, working on rent stabilization, exploring rent registration, exploring putting more money into the Maggie Walker Land Trust. These are all things that I support. You can check out my website again, www.amyandtheeighth.com. And you'll see, if you click on housing, you'll see all the things that I say about housing and all the ways that I would try to improve housing in the area. Again, I am Amy Wentz. I'm running for city council in the city's 8th district. I think it's so important that we have these discussions and that, your representative is able to express things and explain plans and what they want to do. And I just don't feel like we've gotten that in the 8th district for a long time. And I really would love to earn your vote, earn your support. If you have any questions, you can call me 804-446-1029. I am available most times. If I don't answer the phone, I'll call you right back. And the next one, we're talking all things transportation. So we're going to be talking about our transportation access, public transportation access, GRTC. We're going to be talking about walkable and bikeable neighborhoods, making sure that we have, easy access to our public transportation hubs. We're going to be talking about just all things transportation. All right. So join us for that. It's in 2 weeks from today. And is there anything else? Shout out to Eventful. They keep this thing popping. Put up a link to that so that if you all need streaming services, that you all can get that as well. And let me just make sure that I didn't. Yeah, we talked about redevelopment without displacement and website contact information. Invite you to email with your housing questions. Yes, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email them. You can hit the contact us on my website, and I promise that I'll get back to you. Well, thank you all so much for your time, and that concludes the housing virtual town hall. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us.